This chapter is titled The Queen. Dawn came at last, and the rim of a lemon-colored sun rose up behind the rooftop, somewhere behind Victoria Station. A while later, Sophie felt a little of its warmth on her back and was grateful. In the distance, she heard a church clock striking. She counted the strikes, and there were 7. She found it almost impossible to believe that she, Sophie, a little orphan of no real importance in the world, was at this moment actually sitting high above the ground on the windowsill of the Queen of England's bedroom, with the Queen herself asleep in there behind the curtain, not more than 5 yards away. The very idea of it was absurd. No one had ever done such a thing before. It was a terrifying thing to be doing. What would have happened if the dream did not work? No one, at least of all the Queen, would believe a word of her story. It seemed possible that nobody had ever woken up to find a small child sitting behind the curtains on his or her windowsill. The Queen was bound to get a shock. Who wouldn't? With all the patience of a small girl who has something important in wait for, Sophie sat motionless on the windowsill. How much longer, she wondered. What time do queens wake up? Faint stirrings and distant sounds came to her from deep inside the belly of the palace. Then all at once, beyond the curtains, she heard the voice of the sleeper in the bedroom. It was a slightly blurred sleep-talker's voice. "Oh, no!" it cried out. "No, don't! Someone stop them! Don't let them do it! I can't bear it! Oh, please stop them! It's horrible! Oh, it's ghastly! No, no!" She's having her dream, Sophie told herself. It must be really horrid. I feel so sorry for her, but it has to be done. After that, there were a few moans. Then there was a long silence. Sophie waited. She looked over her shoulder, and she was terrified that she would see the man with the dog down in the garden staring up at her. But the garden was deserted. A pale summer mist hung over it like smoke. It was an enormous garden, very beautiful, with a large, funny-shaped lake at the far end. There was an island in the lake, and there were ducks swimming on the water. Inside the room, beyond the curtains, Sophie suddenly heard what was obviously a knock on the door. She heard the doorknob being turned. She heard someone entering the room. "Good morning, Your Majesty," a woman was saying. It was the voice of an oldish person. There was a pause, and then a slight rattle of china and silver. "Will you have your tray on the bed, ma'am, or on the table?" "Oh, Mary, something awful has just happened." This was a voice Sophie had heard many times on the radio and television, especially on Christmas Day. It was a very well-known voice. "Whatever was it, ma'am?" "I've just had the most frightful dream. It was a nightmare. It was awful." "Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am, but don't be distressed. You're awake now, and it will go away. It was only a dream, ma'am." "Do you know what I dreamt, Mary? I dreamt that girls and boys were being snatched out of their beds at boarding school and were being eaten by the most ghastly giants. The giants were pulling their arms in through the dormitory windows and plucking the children out of their fingers. One lot from a girls' school and another from a boys' school. It was all so vivid. Mary, it was all so real."